All right, hello. Let's get this live show started. All right, so as people come in, I encourage you to drop some love in the chat and say hello. And if you are watching this on replay, I encourage you to also drop me some love and let me know what you get from this. So today is my third live in this sequence of talking about various aspects of the coaching business. Um, and today we're going to be talking about scaling a coaching business. The first two were being a professional giver and then the value of coaching, which covers the first two layers of the coaching with integrity school that I teach. The first is turning pro and the second is serve. And this third layer, what I'm going to be exploring today, is grow. How do you go from having a coaching business that is working to some degree, and you might even have gotten to the point where your coaching business is starting to feel quite full? How do you go from that to both making a deeper impact, having more value, creating more value, and making more money, being a more prosperous coach? Like, how does that work? So we're going to be exploring some of that today. And as you're coming in, I encourage you to say hi to the chat and feel free to ask questions, comments as we go. I'd love for this to be interactive. Love to have an opportunity to speak to questions and yeah, it's like so that you are part of this. There's a bunch of things I want to cover within this call. And the first thing that I want to name is that there is one really common trap to overcome, usually towards the very beginning of a coaching business. And it's the trap that's probably going to most limit the growing or scaling or whatever you want to call it of your coaching business. And that trap is being fixated on an hourly rate, thinking in terms of how much money you make per hour, how much money your coaching is worth per hour, as if coaching were manual labor, as if more minutes of coaching perfectly mapped onto more value, more transformation, more of a difference in clients' lives. Now, they are often related, but not at all in a linear way. If you can have a deep impact on a client's life in just a couple minutes, should you get paid less for that than if it took you a year to have the same impact? So a lot of the challenges that coaches face in scaling their business, I can actually trace back to this notion, still kind of fixated on manual labor, still kind of fixated on time. So, and time is the hours are easy to calculate. It's easy to do the math. That's one of the things that's tempting there, but it doesn't line up with the value. So keep an eye out for anywhere where you're fixated on the hour instead of on the impact. So for scaling a coaching business, one of my favorite breakdowns of different dimensions in which you can grow the profitability and impact of a business, and in this case, a coaching business. I actually got this from Michael Neal. It's the value formula, where value equals scale times scope times scarcity. So there's the scale, there's the number of people, it's the amount of service, it is the amount of people who are receiving that service. That's usually where a lot of people easily go and look towards, is like looking to scale the business. And then there's scope. Scope is the depth of the coaching, the depth of the impact. Scope is how much of a difference does this make in this person's life? And this is often acknowledged to a degree within the coaching business, that if you make a bigger impact, you can charge more, you end up making a lot more, it's a lot easier to enroll if you're making a big impact. But there's usually not enough attention paid on this. And the third aspect, scarcity. This is something that almost no coaches are really focused on. It's different than niche. And it's also the thing that's most likely to propel you into very high levels of prosperity, much more than scale, which is actually one of the lesser things to pay attention to. Well, so it's so common. I see so many beginning coaches or even experienced coaches, but who are still struggling in their business. I see so many of them doing groups, doing complimentary events, doing group programs, and they're doing it with a sense of desperation. Like, they think that somehow doing a group, doing something that's higher scale, something that involves more people, that's going to be something that accelerates their business. That's going to help give them a boost. That's going to help them succeed faster. Well, I usually don't see that working for them. They end up spending all this time, days, weeks, months, trying to fill a complimentary event, working so hard doing all this work that they don't really like doing to like get people into the event, usually enjoying the event if it actually happens, and then trying to figure out how to create, out of the people who had attended the event, how to create one or two one-on-one clients from that. And they struggle. And there's all this time that goes into that, which is that they could have spent just creating one-on-one clients. They could have spent that time, that energy coaching people. They could have spent that time and energy connecting with people. They could have spent that time and energy actually making a difference rather than spending all that time marketing. Because honestly, if I suddenly had to start my coaching business from scratch, if I was broke and really needed the money, and I was starting a practice and no one knew me, I would not lead a group event. I would focus on one-on-one. I would go out and I would just start talking to people. I would connect. I would be filling my calendar with connecting with people one-on-one. And that would fairly easily become filling my calendar with talking with people in coaching conversations. And that would pretty easily start a little bit of paid coaching happening. In the time where someone else might be still desperately trying to get people into an event, but they haven't actually served anyone. So let me talk a bit about why when beginning coaches try to scale, they often fail at it. Why scaling often doesn't work for a beginning coach. So Paul Graham, who I believe is one of the founders of Y Combinator, wrote an excellent article a long time ago, which talks about doing things that don't scale. Like, ironically, this is like, it's lessons from the startup culture. These startups that massively scaled, became huge, became really successful, they did so by initially not scaling, by initially not thinking in terms of large numbers, by initially focusing on intimacy and impact, by focusing on like really learning what works by slowing down to speed up. And there's a distinction that I teach within the Coaching with Integrity School that separates these two concerns. I intentionally have layers of the lessons that I teach. There's this first layer of the foundation, and then there's the second layer of the garden. So foundation is what I've mostly been talking about in these Facebook Lives so far. It's focusing on intimacy and impact. It's focusing on conversations. It's focusing on one person at a time. It's making a difference for this person. It's focusing on service. It's focusing on one-on-one coaching. The primacy of that, how vital that is, how important that is. And then the garden is the territory of things like groups and events, social media, content marketing, speaking, building a tribe, building an audience. If you've been following my content, you might suspect that I don't teach those things, but in truth, I actually do teach those things. Those actually are an integral part of what I'm teaching in the school. It's just that I teach them later. I keep them out of reach from the coaches at the beginning because they're likely to reach for them too soon and miss out on something really important that comes before all that. The trap that people fall into in rushing for all that is that they lose the intimacy. They lose track of the intimacy and they lose track of the impact when they're chasing after the numbers. And when that happens, it all falls apart. The foundation, the one-on-one coaching, the conversations, that has to be there. That has to be solid. You need to have a solid foundation of understanding that and being good at that in order for these scale options of the business to actually work. So we're going to go into talking about the foundation first. And so this is growing your business, staying within one-on-one coaching. And you might be surprised how much is possible by having a purely one-on-one coaching business. Peter Senge, who wrote The Fifth Discipline, one of his sayings is, nature doesn't scale, it grows. So this territory, focusing on the one-on-one business, is more about growing. It's more of an organic, and it's more about creating more depth. It's not about turning people into numbers. We've already talked about how that disconnects people and how coaching falls apart, or just no longer becomes coaching when you do that. And one of my favorite distinctions that helped me understand this, like the foundation, there's a distinction from Seth Godin, where he talks about the difference between a freelancer and an entrepreneur. So an entrepreneur, in Seth Godin's terms, is someone who is building a business. Like, they're a professional business builder. Their skill is in creating a business. And they're really creating a thing. Like, they hire people, they scale, they create systems. And part of it is that to be a good entrepreneur, you want to remove yourself as much as possible from the work of the business. Like, your work is creating a business. You're a professional business creator when you're an entrepreneur. Wonderful career, but very different from one-on-one coaching. Now, a freelancer, in Seth Godin's terms, is someone who gets paid when they work. Like, you are the center of the business. If you've got a business where if you disappear, if you kick the bucket, if you decide to go on vacation, the business stops or pauses or whatever. Like, the business is no more. Like, you are the business. And there's a faulty assumption that you can't be prosperous as a freelancer. So I'm here to challenge that today, that you can actually be wildly prosperous as a freelancer, as a one-on-one coach. And the trick to succeeding as a freelancer is that instead of scaling, instead of hiring more, creating more, having more, like serving a wider audience, selling more widgets, selling more services, you grow your business by getting better clients. You grow your business by becoming a better coach. You grow your business by becoming more unique, becoming more and more the only person who does what you do. That is a massive multiplier on the value of your coaching. It's all about making your coaching more valuable rather than trying to coach more people. So, in effect, growing your one-on-one coaching business is putting together the first two lives that I did. It's putting together the lessons of being a professional giver, like being generous, serving people, giving people the experience of your coaching so that they can, this is the second live, like they can know the value of your coaching. And the deeper the value of your coaching, the more you can charge for it. And as soon as you start running out of time, it starts becoming almost a time management necessity to start raising your rates, just to have a good balance of how much you're working and how much you're making. And succeeding, growing, becoming prosperous as a one-on-one coach, it really does mean that you can be prosperous by just coaching. One of the ways that your coaching business stabilizes and grows, where you end up spending like less time for money made, is clients keep on renewing because you have a big impact on them. Because over time, even as they're your client and they're getting value, you're continuing to grow as a human being and as a coach. So you're continuously getting better, so that when it's time for them to renew, not only are they excited about what additional value they might get, also you have so much more to bring to the table. Your style might evolve. Some of the things might deepen. There might be new things that you bring to them because you're continuously doing your own work. You're continuously learning. You're continuously getting your own coaching. It becomes quite natural for clients to stay with you for years. And another thing that fuels a prosperous one-on-one business is referrals. Especially when you're running your business this way. When you're running your business this coaching with integrity way, where you're being generous, where you're not trying to sell people, you're not actually attached to someone becoming a client, but when you're deeply impacting your clients and you're generous when you're gifting coaching to people, it's really, really easy for people to refer people to you. It's the most natural thing in the world. And if people aren't referring people to you, there's some coaching to probably get around that to find out what's missing. You can end up like all the work that you might be doing towards the beginning of a coaching career, where you're really trying to meet a lot of people, where you're really actively looking for opportunities to serve. Eventually, with renewals and referrals, you've got so much momentum that you need systems in order to filter. You need systems in order to select which of these people are you going to gift a conversation to. Which of the people who want to work with you are you going to let work with you? Sometimes the raising your rates is one of the ways that you can filter, and you don't have to. You can easily get to a place in a one-on-one coaching business where you're making as much as you've ever wanted, and you don't need more. And you can hang out there, or you can play the game of like, what if I did aim for more? What would that look like? What would that look like while still being a one-on-one coach? How can you get creative with your fees? How can you get creative with the kinds of things that you offer? I know coaches who will just do or have done a 4-day immersion for like deep transformation, knowing that usually that's all that that client needs. And then they're just available for the next 3 months or 6 months if there's a need to hop on a call. Because the focus is on transformation, not hours, not manual labor. So this does require that you be a good coach. It does require that you are becoming a better coach over time in order to prosper, in order to keep the current clients. But also there's the thing of when you're working with a client who hasn't worked with you before, you have all that you've earned up until then. Like all the skills, all the possibilities, all the coaching mojo that you have like available to this brand new client who's never worked with you before. And suddenly, yeah, it all becomes easy. It's really common, like in the world, the various worlds that are in the lineage of Steve Chandler and the Prosperous Coach. There are many successful multiple six-figure one-on-one coaches who don't do anything else. They're not doing any of the other scaling stuff that I'm about to talk about. So also, like, if you're watching, like, feel free to drop questions, comments, share things that are insights and aha moments for you. Love to hear from you as you're watching. And so moving on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the garden now. And I like the garden as a nature metaphor rather than scaling. Because instead of mechanistically, like analytically, logically saying, hey, I'm just going to take this thing and I'm going to multiply it times 100. Working with multiple people is an evolution. It is an extension of a coaching business. And I want to stress that it is completely optional. I teach the garden later on within the school, partially to make sure that the foundation is there, but also to stress that all of this stuff that I'm about to talk about is stuff that you don't have to do, but you can do. I think of them as extensions to the business. And this includes things like doing a lot of social media interaction. It includes running events, whether they're live events, whether they're online events. It includes creating group programs, whether they're fairly cheap or whether they're high-end, like high-cost group programs. This includes speaking. This includes various forms of content marketing. If you've got a mailing list, or if you write a lot, or if you've got a blog, if you've got a podcast, if you write a book. This includes creating a tribe. This includes creating an audience that follows you and that you're regularly interacting with and creating a lot of intimacy with. There are so many teachers of coaching business that teach that you have to be doing these things. And I want to like snip that apart. Like, I want to separate that. It's like, okay, I want to separate that. There are a lot of great teachers who specialize in one of these, and if you end up doing one of these, I highly encourage that you follow them and look into them and do their programs. But I don't want you to fall into the trap of thinking that the only way that you're going to be able to build your business is doing one of these things. Uh, and I do want to speak to the benefits of doing these high number of people, high scale things. They're optimizations. When you're doing these things, if you've got a mailing list that you're regularly sending stuff to, if you're doing the social media thing, if you're doing groups or events, it's a way to optimize meeting people. It creates more systems where there's more people more easily finding out about you. This optimizes enrollment. So because people get more of an experience of you, of your teachings, of your style, they get more of the experience of coaching, if it's done well, they're more enrolled already by the time that they come into a conversation with you. They're more enrolled already by the time that they're considering like joining that higher end program with you, because they've experienced this and this and this and this and this, all these touch points. And they already have a sense that they know you, that they know your style. You've already impacted them. When you're doing these things in the garden, when you're doing these high scale things, you're already impacting the people. So there's more enrollment that's happened without you having to spend extra minutes on it individually. And it optimizes relationships. Like you might not know them at all, but they feel like they know you. Like they already feel like, hey, so and so, awesome to see you. And you're like, hi, have we met yet? And that just becomes normal when you've got a following. So all of this helps you create momentum. And especially if you're doing stuff in the garden, like if you're doing multiple things. For example, if you're doing content marketing, that makes it a lot easier to also be doing group programs. If you have a podcast or a book, that might lead naturally into, that could be like the entry into creating a tribe, into creating a dedicated group of people who are really interested in everything that you have to say. And these things can help raise the bar for your one-on-one coaching as well, where because you're focusing a lot on the garden, you can be even more selective. Like out of all the people who you want to work with you, who are you going to gift a conversation to? Like which of these people might you want to have as a client? And also it's easier to go out and choose clients and approach clients who, instead of them approaching you, you can approach other people much more easily when you have a lot of this stuff. You have this body of work. You're already known. It's really easy for them to, at a click, start to get a lot of experience of you and your work. And that makes it much more likely to get into a conversation with them. So those are all the benefits, and that's why it's really attractive. But I want to stress it is optional, and there's some other costs to going into the garden, to doing these other aspects of the business. And the biggest cost to doing these high scale things is that they're fundamentally different kinds of business activities. the kinds of things that you're doing, for example, when you're enrolling a group, are often very different. Or actually, I should say they're in addition to all the things that you're doing when you're enrolling one-on-one clients. So in addition to having to have a really good grasp on intimacy and impact, there's a lot of marketing. Like, this is where marketing actually applies. Suddenly here, you do need to take on some marketing skills. If you're enrolling a group, you do need to get really good about describing who this group is for, talking about what benefits they might get from it, what's the value of it, being able to describe what it is. All these things that you're nicely able to sidestep and don't have to deal with within one-on-one coaching. A lot of those more general business skills do apply, and suddenly you need to be good at those as well in order to do this additional work. So if you like marketing, this can be really fun territory to go into. Actually, that's one of the things I want to stress. Because doing this work, extending your business in this way, it takes a lot of work. You will spend a lot less time in coaching conversations and a lot more time in the logistics, in the writing, in the creation, in all of the organizing. You'll be doing a lot of those business activities. So make sure, if you want to take on any of these strategies, make sure that it's work that you love. And that's the bottom line for the section of grow. If you want to do a podcast, do it because you love speaking, sharing, because you want to share stuff with the world. Do it because you love it, not because you think you have to in order to have a successful business. If you want to do a group, do it because you love it. Do it because there's a topic that you really love that you want to do the group around, not because you think you have to, because it's part of the business. And the last cost I want to name for these garden tactics is that they're the long game. It's tempting for beginning coaches to jump to these tactics because it's like more people. They assume that that's going to help them grow faster. Actually, this stuff is slower. There's a good chance that the first couple things that you do, the first couple months, perhaps even years that you spend working on these things are not going to be nearly as profitable as if you spent that time focused on one-on-one coaching. So appropriately, working in the garden, it's more like planting seeds. It takes time. It does create momentum. And it is territory where it can lead to even higher levels of profitability because it's got some of that entrepreneurship aspect to it. In a way, when you're moving into the garden, you are both a freelancer and an entrepreneur. And there is the option where you can become an entrepreneur focusing on the grow side, where you no longer do one-on-one coaching. I don't think I would call you a coach at that point. Like, that's something else. But it also is awesome. Like, you're a transformational entrepreneur. Congratulations. If that's the job you want to create, still would encourage you to get started as one-on-one coaching and build up, like, so that you have a profitable business, and build up into the growth, and gradually you can wean yourself off of one-on-one. And one last thing that I want to stress, this is specifically for high-end groups, for that very tempting thought of, well, instead of just having this number of clients, what if I could have a lot more clients who are paying me this many $1,000? for like this many month program. High-end groups are earned. When it's done with integrity, they're earned. There are certainly tactics in order to cajole, trick, and scare and like just manipulate people into buying something. It's possible. I don't teach that, and I actively discourage that from happening, and I hope to teach such that no one would ever want to do that to anyone. But what does really enroll people into a high-end group is that it's actually going to be uniquely valuable. And it's going to be because you've helped people, most likely one-on-one, with that particular area. You've got the experience, you've got the expertise, you know the traps that they're going to fall into, you know what they're thinking, and you know how to get underneath that, you know how to redirect them. When people are selling a program like this, selling instead of service, they will just list back people's insecurities to them. It's like, oh, you're scared about this and this and this, and you know that you need to work on this and this and this. It's like, well, here's a program that will solve these problems you think you have, and we'll take the steps that you think you need to take in order to fulfill that. Where they're believing the diagnosis. Like there's no transformation that actually takes place. In a way, that's just information. Like that's just parroting back what someone is coming in with, and they're not going to actually grow in that sense. And also with high-end group programs, it requires some mastery of marketing. It requires some mastery of systems. It requires some mastery of group facilitation. And that's why I encourage you to do that if those are things that you love to do. If they are things that you think you have to do, please don't. If you don't actually like writing, don't write. If you don't like social media, do not use social media. If you don't actually want to be communicating with and managing a tribe or an audience, like every week, every day, like continuously interacting, don't do that. If you don't want to write a book, do not write a book. You do not need to do any of those things to be a wildly successful one-on-one coach. And if you do want to do those things, I highly recommend that you first learn the art of being a highly successful one-on-one coach. So with that, I'm just about to close, and if there's anyone who has any questions, I'd love to see those dropped in the chat. And I'm going to check, make sure I can see. Okay. To summarize, oh, there is one last point I wanted to teach. For example, if you're doing a complimentary event and your goal is to create one-on-one clients from that event, if you're doing some of these other tactics, make sure to honor the power of context. So that when you give a workshop, you're not doing the workshop as someone who is a professional in creating workshops. You are a coach. You are a one-on-one coach who just happens to be leading a workshop. If you give a keynote speech, you're not actually a speaker. You are a coach who just happens to be giving a speech. that what you're doing is like the medium that you're working in, but still coming from being a coach. And in those experiences, in those events, when your intention is to create coaching clients, make sure to give them some of the experience of coaching within the event. If you're doing a workshop, make sure they can sit down and coach someone a little bit. Sometimes that's just like in the way that you give feedback. Talk about your experiences coaching people. Include some client coaching stories when you're talking. You can turn the medium that you're working in, whether you're writing an article or a speech or a book or a podcast, and you can craft that medium as if the medium is going to be coaching the person who receives it. Like, even though it's one way or a group format, find a way to create the experience of coaching in whatever you're doing, so that when they're interested in coaching, they've already had some experience of coaching with you through this medium. All right. And with that, I'm going to close up and summarize. So, quick summary. The way to scale a coaching business. There are three ways. There's scale, there's scope, there's scarcity. So scale, that's in the territory of grow, and make sure that you have a solid foundation in order to do that. Scope, intimacy, impact. It's what happens within a coaching conversation. If you fill your calendar with coaching conversations, you're going to totally rock the scope part of growing your business. And scarcity, really getting that there's no one else who can do exactly what you do. If someone hires you, it's not because you're a better coach or because you're a cheaper coach. When someone hires you as a coach, it's because it's you. Like, they're hiring you. And no one else can do what you do. No one else can compete. If they want your particular blend, your particular magic, they're going to have to work with you. And that limitation is going to create value. All right. So thank you, everyone, for your time and attention. And thank you, everyone who listens to this on the replay. I know there's going to be several of you who've asked about this for the replay. After this, I will not be back, at least not for a long time, because this creative energy is about to be redirected into the Coaching with Integrity School. So thank you, everyone, for who's attended. And if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to private message me and I'll answer it. And if it would be helpful, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. Have a good day.